Hi, and welcome to Bloody Good Screen. Haven't done one of these in a while. I am your host, Mark Goddard, and yes, this is our spin off show to Bloody Good Reads, where we force people to pick 3 books they love. This time, we're getting our guests to pick 3 films they love, because I am still a bastard. But this week on the podcast, a little bit different, because we're going to be talking about an audio podcast, an audio drama podcast of horror. The Timekeeper is an amazing 4-part horror thriller audio drama series. By the time this podcast is out, the second episode has just dropped on Spotify. It's amazing. I can't tell you guys how much I'm loving this. So very quickly, here is a bit of the trailer, and then we'll get into this week's guests.
You ever heard about Shady Pines?
Research place out by Borden.
The guy running it goes insane, locks everyone inside, sets the whole place on fire, burns them all alive.
What does that have to do with the game?
The game is Shady Pines.
Good, I was scared there for a second with the lightning and the creepy murder ghost game.
Just pause it.
There is no pause. There is play or do not play. I stop playing, clock starts ticking.
What, you have to play until you beat it?
Exactly.
Tim's missing.
You think it has something to do with the game?
Yes.
No, it's just a game.
How does it know who's playing?
Ghosts.
It's not ghosts.
Then what is it?
The Timekeeper is always watching.
The Timekeeper doesn't exist.
Fairchild says the people he worked with called him the Timekeeper.
Fairchild is dead.
He takes your days, he takes your nights, and then he takes your life. He's always watching.
Everyone who plays this game dies or disappears.
It's just a game, G.
I thought I was the only one at risk because I was the only one playing, but now I don't know.
We need to get to Shady Pines and get the server back on.
We have to destroy it. No one else can ever play. If you don't play, you die. And if you do play, you die.
And that is the trailer for The Timekeeper. But this week, I'm very excited to have the producer and the creator and the director and co-creator of the podcast on the podcast with me today. I've had the podcast way too many times in this intro. First up, she is the creator of Heart Starts Pounding, the amazing podcast that looks into hauntings, horror, and mysteries. Do go and check that out as well. We'll talk about that one later. She has worked on The Nun as well, Annabelle Creation, and The Conjuring 3. So welcome to the podcast. First up, Kaelyn Moore.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on today.
No worries. And we're also joined by the creative director and co-creator of The Timekeeper. He's a writer-director. He has worked for Fox. He has worked on indie films himself. Welcome to the podcast as well this week, Matthew Brown.
Hello, good to be here.
No worries. So what we'd like to do here on Bloody Good Screen is force you guys to pick 3 films that you love, as well as talking about the amazing Timekeeper and how you guys got into horror in the first place. So I'm going to start with Kaelyn first, because we don't really do 2 people on the podcast. It's a rare one for me. I'll start with Kaelyn because it is your company. It's Heart Starts Pounding. So how did you first get into horror in your career?
Yeah, it's kind of a blend of both. So I like to describe my hometown as like a very Stephen King-esque town in New England, where there's just like a lot of lore, a lot of like hauntings and dark history. So I was kind of always like raised around these stories. And actually I talk about this on my podcast, but my great grandfather caught like a serial killer that was operating in my hometown in the early 1900s. And so that was like a story that was always passed down through my family. So I've always like had like a dark sense of like the mind of an investigator and like a dark curiosity, I would say. And then I knew I wanted to work in entertainment. I didn't really know exactly in what capacity. And one of the first jobs I got out of college was actually working for James Wan. And that just kind of like blended everything together and sent me down the path of horror like fully. Yeah, and I just had like an amazing experience getting to work on some of the Conjuring movies, Annabelle, La Llorona. I worked on a lot of their shows that they were doing at the time and got kind of like I got my master's in horror because working for James, you definitely get like a really good education. So that's kind of been my path in the field.
That is 2 great ways of getting into horror. I mean, James Wan's a legend, and you know the Conjuring series. even Annabelle, the Nun. What great films to start out in as well. So, and that backstory with your grandfather, I was reading up on that before you guys came on. That is an amazing story. It doesn't seem
It's
real, but
crazy,
it
right?
is. So it's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild, and it's something that, I was raised with from like a really young age, so I always kind of felt like it was in my blood to, to have that kind of investigative mind. But yeah, no, it is cool having that as like part of my family story.
Okay, cool. And Matt, so you've also been involved in indie film and creative strategy over at Fox as well. So how did you get into kind of horror yourself and kind of the film industry in general?
Yeah, my grandparents actually caught 6 serial killers. A whole ring of them was operating, and they tracked them down. No, actually, for me, I grew up kind of like as a big kind of Edgar Allan Poe nerdy book kid. And I think was always into like that kind of macabre, which is like Kaelyn's favorite thing. So I was around that, but I hadn't like written it. I grew up with a group of people who were kind of all like filmmakers and indie side of things, and then was in advertising, had a production company, and so we were always kind of like creating stuff. And I think but I had never written horror, but I worked at FX. I was a creative director there, and so a lot of the stuff that we were doing was very like, it's a very dark, cool place to work. So I think being immersed in that for like 18 months, going into then like doing a bunch of creative development, it just sort of puts your mind in a place to want to do that. And then Kaelyn and I, when talking about a project to do together, I think with her background and then like kind of where I was at right then, the concept that came up for the Timekeeper was something where I was like, okay, this is really something that fits the sort of like thriller genre and stuff that I really love and usually do, but fits really neatly into kind of like the horror space. And I think is like my favorite types of things are these kind of like, playing in a game you can't win sort of like things, which goes back to like The Ring and like in those sorts of stories. Is something I really love. And from a kind of structural geek standpoint is something I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I can sit down and put my teeth into this and really like enjoy putting it together.
It's a great concept, and it is a kind of your Scrooge kind of a storyline, especially with the timekeeper as well. It kind of plays into that. So, I mean, yeah, FX obviously you over there, great shows over there as well, which are very dark. So it's a great way of getting into it. So, and fiction wise, it links into the other podcast as well. So that's a great way of doing it.
Yeah.
So, Kaelyn, when did the idea for Heart Starts Pounding come along? Because that's a great podcast, and I've been watching some of your shorts right now. Very kind of creepy as hell. So, how did it all kind of come about that you wanted to do the podcast?
So I think the podcast actually started because I started using TikTok like all of us did when we were just baking bread and doing nothing in our apartments in 2020. That's when TikTok started becoming more of a thing, and I wanted to like mess around with it. And of course, I like spooky things, so I started making videos about like ghosts in my apartment and started telling stories that I just knew in my head of like hauntings and unsolved cases, cold cases. And that started getting a lot of traction, which was really exciting. But when you're just doing stuff for TikTok, you don't really have a lot of time to tell the whole story. And so I wanted to find a format where I could really dive into some of the stories people were telling me of their haunting experiences, or, some of the stories that I knew of like cold cases. I wanted to be able to do a long form version of it. So I started the podcast with that in mind. And that was last year, probably around this time last year, and it's just really exploded. I think people were really responding to the stories I was telling on TikTok. So when I was doing the full versions, people just wanted to move over and hear the longer version of them. So like it's been really fun kind of watching that grow and to be able to shape it based on audience feedback and what people are responding to. It's been like a very living format for me, but it's been like so exciting.
Okay, cool. So what made you guys kind of want to team up to do an audio drama? Because audio dramas are getting very, very popular now. I mean, you got a lot of the Marvel ones are doing really well. Got the kind of Star Wars universe, but also in horror, a lot of kind of the story podcasts have been a huge hit, especially in kind of the horror fiction world. So what was it that you guys thought? Okay, I'm going to do a 4-part series with a huge name from The Babysitter, Judah Lawrence, Lewis. Sorry. What made you guys think about doing this?
Well, we didn't have enough money for a feature, so yeah.
But it sounds, but the sound of it, because I've listened to the first episode, and it sounds like a movie when you're walking along. I kind of keep wanting to go to my phone and go, "What? No, it's not a movie." So you've done a great job on this to make it seem like a feature.
Thank you. Yeah, we just have a killer sound designer who really put it all together. And it's nice because the shooting style.
Jeff Schmidt.
Yeah, Jeff Schmidt, who sound designed it. But we were able to record it all. Like each actor only worked for 3 days, 3 half days really, to record their parts, which was so nice. And I think it was kind of a function of like coming out of COVID, we were able to do this fully remotely. And that was nice having that ability. But also the story that we came up with, like we never really thought of this story as a feature or thought of it as a TV show. It kind of always felt like it was an audio drama.
But I think like the real origin was like over 2 years ago now. A good friend of mine who I used to have a production company with was like, hey, I have some investors who are looking at maybe putting together like a film slate or something. Like, could you look into that? And I was like, that's a terrible idea. Don't make a bunch of movies. You'll never make money.
Yeah.
So we started looking at, was there a way to do that with like podcasts? Does it make more sense to be able to create, 20 podcasts for the cost of one movie and like see what hits? And so we really dug in. This was like, I guess 2 years ago, kind of the business side of podcasting, which we hadn't really done before.
Yeah.
And that was sitting in the back of our minds for probably a year when we started looking at, okay, I was like, I really want to make a project. I haven't been able to make a project in a while. I've been doing a lot of development work. Kaelyn was like kind of in the same space.
Definitely.
Of like just wanting, because you had just come off of, I guess, like, Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah, it was just a really hard time in like the TV and film space to sell stuff. With COVID, there wasn't a lot of stuff being greenlit. So I was just kind of looking at the runway of projects I had lined up, and I was like, oh man, I really don't think I'm going to be able to make anything in the next few years, like unless there's some sort of miracle. So we really were prioritizing stuff that we knew we could just go out and make.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, yeah.
So I think that was like all sort of like for, I guess, 12 months, like kind of settling in the back of our minds when we really kind of started thinking, okay, let's seriously talk about what we can make. And then Kaelyn was like, oh, what we could make it as like, we could make an audio drama. And I think that's when it sort of clicked.
And there's a lot less money in a way, because obviously you're not going on site and you're not doing kind of shoots elsewhere. Do you do it? I'm assuming you do record in the studio, or are you doing it from home? Or
we had actors record in their closets. Everyone, and we gave some of the actors the option to, we'll rent a studio if you want, but everyone opted to just recording at home, and they put up blankets around. They like built their own studios. It was so cute to see. But I think just giving people the option of, one of our actresses, Chandler Kinney, she was on her press tour for Pretty Little Liars Original Sin. And she still took this job because she knew she could wake up, record her episodes with us in the morning, and then continue on with her busy schedule. Like the recording of this podcast didn't interrupt anyone's lives that much. And I think also because of that, we were able to get bigger name people and I don't know, just put the whole thing together in a way.
Awesome. So it's a good cast, actually. I'm surprised on the cast in this one.
Yeah, we were so excited about the cast. Like,
well, and Kaelyn had worked with Arjun on Are You Afraid of the Dark? Just before that, so like that was,
yeah, it was fun working with him again. Yeah, it was, and they all got along really well. We ended up recording a few of the 3 main actors all had at least one day together, just so that we could get, everyone like matching energy in the scene and everyone kind of getting a feel for each other, because none of them had ever met. So we were recording scenes where they're like, okay, I know Charlie's really excited in this scene, but how did Gamma record it? Like, and so it was nice being able to get them together so that they could kind of get a feel for each other.
Yeah, I was like, we don't have to spend forever on it, but the process side of a podcast for me, like going into it the first time doing it, like as kind of on the directing side, was really interesting. So happy to discuss any questions that you have there, but if it's boring for your listeners, we can also
no, that's what people are here for. So Matt, What is it like kind of directing an audio drama like this? Because obviously you're directing people normally if you're kind of doing movies. So is it much different? I'm assuming it's very similar to kind of doing kind of animation work in a way, because you're still only really doing kind of voice acting.
Yeah, so that's a good point, and that's something Arjun actually brought up during the recording, is because from kind of a lot of Disney stuff that he'd done a ton of ADR. So for actors who have done a ton of ADR, the process is pretty similar, because you're just like, okay, give me this line in 3 different reads, right? 3 different like levels of energy, and you can just kind of like go through that very instantly. But not all like actors work that way, right? So it's this, everyone has like kind of on the acting side like their own sort of like method or process like to go through to get into the headspace or whatever. So I think the biggest thing for me, like coming at it directing wise, is how can I get these people to be in the same headspace at different times over different sessions without having them in the same room? And that I think was the biggest challenge, because I talked about this one a lot. Like, even if you're making an indie film, you have like everyone's on set and there's sort of like a vibe and people get to know each other and there's a little time to bond. But you just don't have that. Like, how do you get someone when we're saying, okay, you're going to be like running through an asylum or something, like, but really like you're in your closet alone, like there's no sound design, there's no set. It really is a challenge for the actors, and I think that was the biggest thing, is working through and like honestly like kind of iterating and letting the actors sort of like take it the way they wanted to at first, and then just trying to slowly shape it into what I knew everyone else was doing. Because I think that's the other tricky thing, is like I've already listened and I know how Judah's performed a scene, right? But Chandler doesn't. In their schedule wise, like we can't make that work a lot of times, or like we can't send over the audio and like let them listen to it. So I'm trying to like imagine the audio in my head while the other actor's performing it to make sure it matches.
It sounds really difficult to kind of balance it out. So I'm assuming it's kind of, imagine it being the same way as like doing horror video games a lot of the time as well, because you've got a lot like The Quarry, but not having them in the same room. I'm trying to have the same kind of feel, and yeah,
and I think the tricky thing too is like there's no visuals, right? So like even with like a video game, sometimes like you may have done like some of the scene capture stuff before, but so you at least know like what stuff looks like.
But really, you kind of picture how are you going to run away from this serial killer right now? And it's like in my cupboard, I can use these clothes, pretend to be that person. But whatever they do in the closet,
what is the space? What's the actual? I'm like having to describe the physical space they're in and be like, okay, imagine it's 10 steps here. Imagine then you're hitting this thing. It's like it's weird from a script writing perspective too. It's very different than writing a normal screenplay.
Showing their acting skills as well, to be able to do this in a cupboard as well.
Oh my god, it's so impressive. Yeah, and I would say like they were all such champs with it too, of like really like wanting to do whatever it took. Like Judah, doing sets of push-ups to like get his breath up so he could do like a scene where he's supposed to be panting. It just really fit. Like I can't speak high, and Judah is also an executive producer on this.
Yeah,
I can't speak highly enough about Judah, Chandler, and Arjun. Just like so wonderful to work with.
So how did Judah kind of get involved? How did he get into kind of the team side of it with you guys? Is he kind of really kind of that passionate about the podcast himself, or?
Yeah, totally. So the way that we sent the script to Judah and his team, just saying like, because as we were writing the script too, we were conceiving of the idea, we were thinking a lot about the babysitter, and we were like, maybe we should let's just take a chance. Like we should just ask. We never know unless we try. So we sent it to his team. And I had heard that Judah's really picky. So I was like, we don't know. Like, let's just send it and see what happens. And then we got that phone call that he had read the script and he really liked it. And he ended up telling us later that he is just a really picky actor. So when he likes something, he really, really likes it and he really wants to be involved. And he had a lot of experience with like Summer of '84 and The Babysitter, working on projects that were similar to the TimeKeeper. So we invited him onto as an EP so he could kind of give his perspective on the script and his character. And he's much closer to the ages of the character than we are. So he gave really good notes on how kids that age like talk to each other for real. But yeah, so he was just like really involved in like the whole like the scripting process too when he came on.
I completely forgot he was in the summer of '84, and I loved that movie.
Yeah, that movie's great.
That movie is
Yeah.
it's so unsettling. Like
Mm.
the third act, it goes so much darker. It's like
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, it's like kind of the Goonies but with a joke, and I'm like, oh no, it's not.
No,
It's
that
not that
final
at all.
scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we get into the plot behind the podcast and a little bit about where we're going to go with it in the next 4 episodes, again, what we like to do on the podcast is force people to pick 3 films that they love. So I don't know how we're going to do this. Have you chosen them together or chosen them separately?
We did choose them together. Like, when we talked about it, we were talking about them together. But now I kind of want to add Summer of '84 to the list now that we brought it up.
I'm happy to do 4. 2 each. There you go.
That might be like an honorable mention.
We'll do 2 each. There you go. Just throw it out there. So, okay, I'll go to Kaelyn. What are your first? What are your 2 options for your Bloody Good screens?
My picks. Okay, I'm gonna choose The Conjuring, which is one that we talked about together, but I'm gonna claim it because I worked on some of those movies, so I'm very passionate about them. I'm gonna pick the first Conjuring.
Okay.
And then I'm also gonna pick Jennifer's Body as just
Good
like an
choice.
all-time one of my favorites. Being a teenage girl at sleepovers, watching it every night, like every sleepover. It's on my Mount Rushmore.
It's a shame that she doesn't really mention it much anymore because she's very good in it. She's very good in it.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of people that worked on that movie don't really mention it that much because I don't think Karen Kusama had that great of an experience either. But it's just so iconic. Like everyone, all of my friends, we still quote it all the time.
It's got like cult classic kind of feel to it. And,
yeah, and it only gets better as it ages too. It only becomes more relevant, I think.
And The Conjuring's a favourite here on the podcast. The rest of the team loved The Conjuring. We haven't done Conjuring 3 yet. It's one we're waiting to do on the podcast. I'm just trying to wait for our streaming service over here to show it for a decent price.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, we've never gotten to Conjuring 3, but we've done the Annabelle series. We've done Conjuring 1, 2. Conjuring 2 is not my favourite. Conjuring 1 I do love. But yeah.
Interesting. Nice.
It's because of the British case, and I know the real history behind the case. And they weren't involved in it so much, and that's what throws me off. But that's just my own personal feeling on that one. But
yeah, I guess the first one because I grew up in New England too, so it also has that kind of like hometown feel. It's like the parent house that it happened in is the Warrens are from Connecticut where I'm from, so there's that. But also the parents are only like an hour and a half from my house, so it feels very like true to the area, and it feels kind of like where I grew up.
Awesome, 2 very good picks.
Thank you.
And Matt, what are you bringing on for your 2 picks?
The first is definitely The Ring. That is to me like kind of a perfect, like the gears of that movie turn perfectly. I've like studied it so much. It's like every beat of that movie is imprinted in my brain now. And then second is tougher because Kaelyn had picked them together. So now I have to think like what I will want to pick for that.
Sorry to throw that out there.
No, it's fine. I'm going through like the Rolodex in my head. I actually would like to pick a UK film, Wicker Man, the original.
Oh yeah,
classic. Yep, brilliant choice. One. That's 4 really good choices, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot there as well.
No, it's fine.
I know we talked about so many. Now I want to put Barbarian on my list because I was like, "Would you say Barbarian?" And he said no. I loved it so. I haven't been that excited in a theater in so long.
Mm-hmm. That the kind of middle drop off where you think, oh, wait a minute, it's still got like half a movie to go. And Justin Long's character is such a dick. So...
Oh my god, yeah. And it's so fun, like watching it with like a big group too. Like no one's expecting what's happening the whole time, so everyone's freaking out. Like it was just such a good theater experience.
I wish I saw it at Fright Fest, but
Oh yeah.
but we never got around to watching it over there in the end. But and you've also said Summer of '84 as well, which
No.
was my film of the year that year. I did catch that at Fright Fest, and we
Oh,
watched
wow.
it
Oh
on the
wow,
podcast as well.
nice.
And yeah, love that film. That it's just that final scene which kind of sticks with you. And
Oh
he's kind of
god,
saying, "I'll come
yeah.
back and get you."
I love a movie that goes bonkers. I think
Mm,
that's when I see a movie that I feel like doesn't stick the landing, I always feel like it's because they just didn't go bonkers with it. They just didn't, go insane in the way that I wanted them to. Like that's how I felt about Promising Young Woman, which is another movie that I would put on my list, but I thought it could have gone so much crazier in the end. But then to see like Summer of '84 just really take a big swing and go for it was awesome.
Would love to see a second movie.
Oh
But,
yeah. Oh,
yeah.
definitely.
I'm like a big tone person. Like,
Mm,
so the tone of that movie, although it changes a little bit towards the end, like the tone of that movie is just so good to
mm.
me, like, and so sort of like specific. That's what I like really love about stuff, is just like
Yeah.
creating like atmospheres and like moods. I think it does it so well.
Yeah.
Yeah, very Rear Window feeling in that movie at the start.
Yeah.
The neighbor obviously doing something wrong, and from the start saying's not right from that point, but
Totally.
then sets you at ease as well. So
Well, there's a funny scene in that movie where the like house phone rings or something, and she like makes some comment of like who uses a house phone, or like there's some comment in it about like the house phone. And we watched Summer of '84 after I'd written the Timekeeper. We'd sent it to Judah, and I was just kind of doing more kind of like prep stuff. And like there's an almost identical moment like in the Timekeeper script, and I was like, "You just gonna read that and be
Yeah.
like, did you just rip this from Summer of
Yeah.
'84?"
Did we just steal it?
it's like no.
Yeah,
Never seen
was
that movie
pretty
before in
funny.
my life. Awesome. No, 4 brilliant picks. Again, we haven't done this podcast for a while, so it's nice to have some film picks instead of book picks for a change. Awesome. So, the Timekeeper. So we've on to episode 2 now. So 2 more episodes coming in the next couple of weeks. So without spoiling too much, what is the general idea behind the Timekeeper? Give us a little bit of plot, and go from there.
Yeah, so the general idea is there are a group of kids in a small town who end up playing a video game that they come to think may be cursed, so that everyone who plays the game, it seems ends up dead. So the plot is really they're trying to figure out the origins of the game, where it came from, who made it. They figure out it's kind of tied to this facility where a bunch of people died many years before, called Shady Pines. So they're trying to figure out, one, who made the game, and then also how to beat it. And that's kind of the gist. And the game has like this very specific mechanic where, you have 24 hours to find the 13 keys that are hidden in the game, and that's how you defeat the Timekeeper. Otherwise, the Timekeeper comes for you. So that's kind of the main thing.
Awesome. Now, it's a brilliant idea, guys. And I'm halfway through episode 2 at the moment because I've been so busy with it. I haven't had a chance to listen to it before tonight. And yeah, it's so atmospheric. The acting is amazing. It is like having a film in your ears, and the acting is brilliant. The sounding's brilliant. Even the videos you have with it is amazing. So everybody go and check out the Timekeeper. I can't recommend it anymore. The guys have listened to it as well on the podcast, and they are really enjoying it too. It's a shame they can't get on here as well to share the love, but we will hopefully be talking a little bit about it on one of the podcasts coming up.
Awesome.
As well. So awesome.
Awesome.
So what are you guys working on next? We'll go to Matt first. What are you working on coming up next? Are you any more of these audio dramas you're looking at, or are you looking at more kind of movie stuff?
Yeah, a little of both. So I think, obviously we're kind of in the midst of putting out the Timekeeper right now. So if we'll probably have some conversations, and I've already had some conversations with production companies about potential film side there, which would have kind of my involvement. Or if we're looking at maybe, as you'll see when you get to the end of episode 4, potential season 2 of the Timekeeper is also on the radar right now. But yeah, a lot of a lot of irons in the fire, as everyone who works in kind of entertainment is always like, hopefully something works. We'll just keep making stuff. And then the other main thing is just like kind of working with Kaelyn on some of the Heart Starts Pounding things and some of like the branding stuff there, is that being my other sort of non-creative background is on the kind of, advertising marketing side. So
brilliant. And Kaelyn, what are you working on next? And any more news on anything else happening up in Heart Starts Pounding?
Yeah, we're really excited to come back at the beginning of May. The first week of May, we're going to be every week, always on with Heart Starts Pounding. We have a bunch of new fun stories from paranormal, supernatural, cold cases, old Victorian murders, lots of fun stuff there. We actually just at the Parapod Festival 2 weekends ago won Best True Crime Podcast, Podcast of the Year, and Host of the Year. So we've gotten like a surge of press and a surge of new listeners from that. So we're really excited. But yeah, mostly just chugging away on Heart Starts Pounding, getting an episode out every week. That's like the big thing that we're working on right now. And then also looking at ways to expand the world of Heart Starts Pounding, like having an audio drama under our belt and, other ways that we can expand the world, because there's a lot of people out there that really like this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really become like a cool community of people who have really dark senses of curiosity. So I'm excited to make more stuff in that vein.
Awesome. And yeah, go and check out both podcasts, because I have got Heart Starts Pounding waiting to go at work for tomorrow. So
Perfect. Love
awesome.
it.
Cool. Thank you guys both for coming on. Again, really enjoying the work on Timekeeper, and I'm really enjoying Heart Starts Pounding. Where can people find you guys if you'd like to be found?
So the podcasts are available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, a bunch of other places. And then I'm on social media at Heart Starts Pounding, and that's both on Instagram and TikTok. It's a little bit of personal stuff, but also kind of like a daily dose of horror, where I do a bunch of short form content, either related to the Heart Starts Pounding podcast or just kind of like spooky things I'm interested in of the day, just kind of talking about stuff. So there's lots of good content on there.
And like most writers, I don't like to be found. So yeah. I just let all of Kaelyn's socials are all of the stuff, and I stay behind the scenes.
You can actually not find Matt anywhere. It's really, really crazy.
Well, I also have the perfect name for that, because there's, 6 million Matt Browns in the US.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Like,
it's not even really your real name, is it? You got a completely different name.
Yeah, well,
I always say that. I'm like, this is just an alias.
Yeah, it's my whole family. Everyone's like, Matt, your dad's name is not James Brown. That's not a.
It is.
You're not John Smith. Yeah.
Right.
Amazing. Cool. This is why I always ask people if you want to be found, because like you said, writers don't always want to be found.
Not necessarily, yeah.
Awesome. So again, a huge thank you to Kaelyn and Matt for coming on the podcast this week. Go and check out Timekeeper. It's in the link below. Check out the trailer as well on our website as well. And also a huge shout out to our sponsor, Abominable Book Club. They're the UK's best and biggest UK horror and thriller book box service, bringing the wonders of a haunted bookshop straight to your door each month. You can either get the Full Guts box, which is a brand new book, a possibly haunted second-hand book, and another indie title, along with snacks, drinks, bookmarks, and other goodies inside, from canvas bags to badges, the whole lot. If you just want books are awesome. I don't blame you. Just go for the bare bones box. You can always get 10% off your box. We're using the code BloodyGoodReads as well. Do check us out over on social media, over at Bloody Good Reads at Twitter, Bloody Good Reads over on Instagram, and the Bloody Good Reads book group on Facebook. Don't know why I couldn't get that one. And you can also catch us every month on the Bloody Good Screen Movie Club with me, Niall, Chloe, and Marcus talking and reviewing movies. And my B-movie podcast as well with Hunter Shea. We talk about random B-movies. We've got Calamity of Snakes coming up. That could be an interesting one. Snake exploitation. Never knew it existed. But yeah, do give us a like, a share, and subscribe wherever you get the podcast. And we'll see you next time.